It never starts with sirens. There's no televised crisis, no breaking news banner flashing across your screen. But somewhere, in the heart of a city or the corner of a town, a shopkeeper turns their key for the last time. That is how small businesses collapse. Quietly, invisibly, like a tree falling in a forest with no one around to hear it. Tariffs were never designed with the neighborhood florist, the stationery shop, or the bespoke furniture maker in mind. They were crafted for national leverage, for power plays between governments seeking control. But for the millions of small business owners across the US and beyond, tariffs aren't chess moves, they're hammers. And yet, this truth doesn't make headlines. Instead, we're left with a narrative that centers on GDP projections and deficit numbers. Important, yes, but divorced from the lived reality of the people holding the economy together at the seams. This video isn't about policy. It's about people. It's about what happens when the rules of global trade change, and those who can't keep up aren't just left behind. They're buried by the cost. Small businesses are, by their very nature, vulnerable. They don't have sprawling legal teams or million-dollar contingency budgets. They operate on faith, hustle, and hope. And when tariffs are imposed, abruptly and without warning, those hopes are often the first thing to go. In late 2024, a series of revised tariffs on Chinese imports triggered shockwaves across the American small business landscape. According to a Business Insider article, Loftie, a New York-based wellness tech company, saw its costs spike by over 170%. Their flagship, sleep-promoting digital clock manufactured in China, became too expensive to sell at a profit. Founder Matthew Hassett had no choice but to pivot the company's entire business model toward software. This is the lesson tariffs teach us. The rules can change overnight, and when they do, adaptability becomes more valuable than inventory. Loftie isn't alone. Take Simplified, a small women-owned business in Florida that produces planners and lifestyle stationery. As reported by Business Insider, CEO Emily Lee is suing over Trump-era tariffs that continue to affect her supply chain. Her production costs have soared by 145%, costing her business nearly $1.2 million over the past years. She's had to delay hiring, halt expansion plans, and is now fighting a legal battle just to survive. These aren't isolated cases. According to the National Federation of Independent Business, NFIB, around 40% of small businesses affected by tariffs have been forced to raise prices, lay off staff, or delay growth initiatives. While precise closure statistics vary, surveys and reports point to significant stress within the small business ecosystem. This is where the domino effect begins. It starts with one disrupted shipment, one cost increase, one cancelled contract. But it spreads fast, affecting not just the businesses themselves, but the communities that depend on them. Rather than rely on exaggerated statistics, let's look at the deeper truth. The pain is real even if it doesn't always come with neat numbers. When policy changes drive up operational costs or cut off international access, thousands of businesses, especially those without backup capital, are left with impossible choices. Think of the single mother whose online store depends on imported packaging, or the independent retailer whose seasonal products arrive too late due to customs delays. These aren't hypotheticals. They're the kinds of realities documented across hundreds of interviews and industry insights by outlets like The Guardian, Wired, and Business Insider. This is the invisible toll of economic policy. It doesn't always scream in statistics, but it whispers in closures, layoffs, and quiet despair. Growth needs something to stand on. It needs predictability, even if just a little. When small business owners map out their budgets, they assume that the costs they see today will somewhat resemble the costs of tomorrow. Tariffs upend that equation. Imagine you're running a modest design studio. You've built up a customer base. You've found a reliable supplier overseas. But then, overnight, a new tariff adds 25% to your import costs. Do you eat the margin, pass it to the customer, or risk losing both? This is not just about cost, it's about control. Trade wars introduce volatility, and volatility punishes those with the least room to maneuver. In that equation, small businesses always lose. One of the biggest lies we've been sold is that self-reliance means separation, that independence comes from cutting ties. But no business, large or small, thrives in a vacuum, especially not in a world where your coffee beans are grown in Colombia, roasted in California, and served in a shop owned by a local family. Tariffs create borders where once there was flow. They assume that if you close your doors to others, you somehow become stronger. But the opposite is true. We lose innovation, we lose efficiency, and we lose the beautiful complexity of international cooperation that small businesses depend on every single day. So, what can we learn from this? We need to move from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. Instead of believing there's not enough to go around, so we have to protect what's ours, we begin asking, how do we create more? And how do we grow together? This isn't idealism, it's strategy. Abundance thinking makes space for partnerships. It embraces creativity, and it allows small businesses to scale without fear that the rug will be pulled out from under them by policy shifts beyond their control. This shift doesn't just serve business owners, it serves society, because when small businesses thrive, so do communities, so do the families, and so does innovation. We're not asking for a world without rules, we're asking for a world with better ones, for trade policies that don't forget the people they ultimately serve, for international cooperation that acknowledges small businesses as essential, not expendable. Let's design systems that support growth from the bottom up, not just the top down. Let's build trade agreements that include small businesses in the conversation. Let's bring empathy back into economic design. Because if we don't, the silent collapse will continue. Not with explosions, but with one closed shop at a time. And by then, the damage may be harder to reverse.